And well, let's talk about I think the main features, and I'm pretty sure for what like the reasons you are here, which is AutoQA. It is indeed a flagship feature of this AI proposition, and so we'll discuss everything in details, how to use it, how to install it, and also like what the categories do. So here you can see I have a conversation between customer and Callum. Callum is being the agent, and I have here in the preview the results of Callum via AutoQA. So I can see score is AQS, which is like the score for AutoQA. So you have indeed the AQS that will stay for manual QA, and then you're gonna have AQS for AutoQA. So you can see like is scoring over like the different categories that we have. So right now, our offer contained 8 categories in total. So we have greeting, closing, and then you're gonna have within the soft skills the tone, empathy, readability, and the solution you're gonna have comprehension and solution offered, and then you're gonna have spelling grammars. So you actually, I would first of all, I will always suggest for you to have like a scorecard strictly dedicated to AutoQA to see like the raw data, but as well because some functionality are available within the scorecard, but are not available within the preview. One of those functionality and one that you will definitely appreciate is the highlight. So you can see here, for example, spelling grammars, you have the possibility to highlight it, and you can highlight the misspelling within this conversation. So you can double check as well. And you can see where possible misspelling mistakes have been found. Also, like if that's not the case within the conversation, but if there's any grammatical mistakes, we'll also spot them with that category. So you're gonna have the tone on some categories. For example, readability, you're gonna have the also the possibility to highlight like the complex words that's being used or the words that make the message a bit less readable. And you can of course use that information. Now, about that scorecard, like yeah, this is really something like feel free to like I will always suggest for you to gather all the AutoQA on one scorecard, but as well you can use AutoQA rate like AutoQA categories on different scorecards. So here I have a couple of examples. For example, this one is actually a scorecard that is mixing AutoQA ratings and manual QA. So you can see that part of my rating is done via AutoQA, and I have like 3 categories here that is strictly manual. So that's actually something that we've noticed with a lot of our customer, and that's something that we strongly encourage, like for you to provide more information with your agent, but also less work for your reviewers. You can actually mix and match like auto QA rating and manual QA rating. And so like that, you have a lot more information to give to the agent and to send it when you send a review. Also, what I will have to say is that any category of AutoQA can be changed. So if you're not agreeing with the 3 within the spelling grammars, you can change it to a 4 before sending to the agent. But know that when you actually send and submit that review, that's when the AutoQA rating will start counting for the AQS. So just be mindful of that. So AutoQA is just one of our AI. We have actually several AI. So second AI is Spotlight. So what is Spotlight? It's a different AI that will read the conversation, understand the conversation, and that will be able to basically provide like more information within the ticket. So for example, in this case, the Spotlight has identified churn risk. It identifies also outliers, and I will also explain what outlier means. And you also have negative sentiment, which is our third AI. Like that's one that is, you can also have a visual aid, which is like that smiley face frowning in there, showing you when there's a negative sentiment. We also have like positive sentiments, because like QA is not strictly negative. It's also to reward like agent after done a good work. So all of that information are available within the tickets, but you can also use it to filter. The same goes for the AutoQA rating. And that's also like, I will say one of the use cases that we noticed with AutoQA is that you can use it to find better tickets for you to rate. So in this case, I will create a filter. And I will show you where you can find those AI categories. So here, like within the categories, you're gonna have all the 8 categories of AutoQA. And you're gonna have also some AI filters option that's available to you. For example, language, agent reply count. Those has been developed just to make sure to, I will say, fill the gap from your metadata. So sometimes, like within Zendesk, we don't have those information. So we basically created an AI that will be able to, for example, count the number of time that the customer reply, the most active agent, etc. And so that's actually something that you can include within your filters to make it a bit more complex. We actually have the same thing for bots. You can see like we have like the different bots categories, and you can easily find them like once you install the bot. And then you're gonna have those spotlights. So here you can see like a complete offer on spotlights. We have actually like spotlight for bots. So that's around 2 categories. So communication efficiency. So when the bot is more efficient or less efficient than your agent, and also when it's repeating, because we noticed that actually around bots, this is really something that I will say like bot agent and AI agent in general have this problem is that sometimes they repeat themselves, and we can actually locate those kind of repetitions. And then you're gonna have all the other category. For example, churn risk. We have also dead air for calls, and that's when like you have a dead air. It's always awkward, right? And we can also show you like how to customize that category. You have when the customer seek higher level assistance, exceptional services. When follow up, like either the customer agent requested a follow up, ineligible for review. So that's basically also like a conversation that have no replies, and that famous outliers. So what is outliers? Outlier is basically an option within Spotlight that would look at conversation for you to prioritize. So what are the different factors that we use? Well, if the conversation is too complex, if there's a lot of negative sentiment, if the customer is confused, well, everything is going to enter within outliers, and it's basically that will allow you to prioritize some case. And then we have like also like the recording disclosing missing. That's quite important, especially in Europe. So we'll be able to locate that for you. It's going to be especially important if you use like Zendesk Talk, for example. And then the sentiment, like negative or positive sentiment. So that's the thing. You can actually compile like different, like you can compile, for example, the rating of AutoQA and Spotlight, a Spotlight filter option to make quite a complex filters. I have really a good example on that. For here, you can choose solution offered is negative. So solution is offer is negative, and escalation has been requested. So that will able to locate like conversation where the agent did not provide any solution to the customer, and there was an escalation requested. Then the customer asked to speak to a manager. So typically those kind of filters are very useful for that. So I will give it a name. So escalation requested, no solution. And you can see that he found 57 conversation. Now, let's say that within this 57 is a bit too much for me to review. So I can actually activate the outlier filter. And that you see that 57 went to 8. So I know that those 8 conversation, those are the 8 conversation that OAI will basically telling me to prioritize. So I can create these filters now. And I can start reviewing those 8 conversation. Okay, so we saw like technically how to use the AutoQA, how to use Spotlight. Now, the first thing is like how to activate AutoQA. So for me, it was important to show you like how to use it and what it does. So like that, we can actually go ahead and activate it together. I will also explain how each category works within that installation. So for that, I will create like a fake workspace. There you go. And now I will create the category of AutoQA. Now, let's create a second scorecard. You can see that for this workspace now, I just have one. Well, this is typical, like when you create a workspace, you only have the default one. So I'm just gonna add a new one for AutoQA. There you go. And now to activate AutoQA, you're gonna have to turn on the toggle here and choose the AutoQA categories that you would like to add. Let's start with greeting. Now, that's quite important. If you don't activate the category of AutoQA within the workspace, then AutoQA will not work within that workspace. So that's something that you have to opt in to make sure that it works. So be mindful of that. Now, let's start with the greeting. Basically, we're going to look at a typical greeting. So we have a list of approved greetings, and we're going to look if the greeting used by the agent is approved. If there is no greeting or like the greeting is incorrect, then we will rate accordingly. Like we'll rate either negatively or not answered for the case that there is no greeting. We can add those 8. Now, empathy, well, this is pretty straightforward. Like this is if the agents have acknowledged the customer feeling. Then we have spelling grammar, same thing. It's pretty straightforward. What's going to be important about spelling grammar is that we do analyze right now English, French, and German. But know that we are developing more language right now, and I believe that Spanish and Portuguese will be available quite soon. Then closing for the same logic as greeting. So in this case, we also look at an approved list of closing. Solution offered. We're gonna analyze the conversation and see if the agents have offered a solution. Tone. So we're gonna analyze the tone throughout the conversation, and we're gonna also give you an insight into what's the tone. So you can see that here there is root cause like for tones. We can see if the tone is apologetic, negative, professional, sportive, etc. And so we'll be able to provide that information to you. Readability. We're getting close. We're almost there. So readabilities, and we can analyze text to see if it can be understood, if it's maybe a bit too long, like a bit confused. It's also kind of correlated with its spelling grammars. So in this case, like this is typically soft skills, but it can also, like having a spelling grammars will also make the text less readable. And finally, comprehension, like if the agent understood the customer query. So that's pretty straightforward. That's it. That's all. So now all of those 8 has been activated. So starting from now, we're going to start analyzing the conversation. So there's quite a lot of confusion. We unfortunately cannot run AutoQA with the past sync conversation. So starting from the moment you activate AutoQA, we're going to start analyzing the conversation. But if you haven't activated AutoQA, unfortunately, we cannot go back in the past and analyze those conversations. So it's quite important to activate it as soon as you have the account or as soon as you want to use the functionality. Now, those are the 8 that we currently offered, but we actually have like a possibility of personalizing those. So we're gonna go ahead and access the settings. Within the settings of AutoQA, you're gonna have the possibility of personalizing spelling grammar. So you have the possibility to add like an exemption list. That's gonna be quite practical if you, for example, your brand name is not it's not approved, or it's not like really no or grammatical grammar and like or list of approved words. So then you can go ahead and add, or for example, like names. Well, we have like a colleague Diana. Unfortunately, her name was not recognized because she's from Croatia, and so we add it as well in the list. Just to give you a couple of examples, but just make sure to update those lists. And then you're gonna have within the greeting and closing, you have the possibility to add your approved greeting and approved closing. Now, what does it mean? That means that you can replace the list that we use by an updated list of approved greeting and closing. That's going to be particularly interesting if you use macro, because in this case, you can just upload your macro and then we're only going to follow this list. So just be aware that when you upload your list we will only use your list. We will not we will not continue with our pre-existing list of greeting and closing. So just be mindful of that. We also developed now the possibility for you to develop your own category. Now, when I say that, it's quite limited right now. And that doesn't mean that we're gonna not develop this functionality. It's actually on our roadmap for next year. But just know that right now it's gonna work like an automation. So if you want to create a new category, it's possible. The way that it works is right now it works on the basic of looking for if an agent has sent a specific word or a specific sentence within the tickets. And then we can also look at like specific conversation. So specific conversation, we're gonna look at, for example, the source type, the channel. So for example, if the conversation channel was like to voice or to chat, or the help desk tag. So I think that's something that's gonna be quite practical for you. And then if the agent message contain a certain word or a certain phrasing, then we can score accordingly, positively or negatively. So we have like a few examples here for you to help. Like for example, did the agent offer a demo? You can actually add it to like with a help desk tag. If you have like a sales tag or something like that, well, you can just activate the specific conversation, use that help desk tags, and you can make sure that like your agent always propose a demo within those conversations. We have also like discount offered, forward passwords, code accuracy. You can have quite a lot of ideas in there. Now, that's all for AutoQA. We'll also start looking at, we're going back to AutoQA and Spotlight afterwards within the dashboard. But right now, I really want to show you like a functionality that not a lot of customers use, and it's quite a shame, which is Insight. Now, Insight also use like the outlier, the sentiment for you to analyze your conversation. So Insight is particularly interesting when you don't really know like how to improve your support, and you want to go forward and try to find like correlation between, for example, like negative CSAT and a certain part of your support. So let's do one together. Now, you can see right now that, well, it's very confusing. There's quite a lot of information you can go ahead. So like, that's one tip generally that I give during my onboarding is that you can deactivate everything. You can just like keep just maybe 2 or 3 correlation and try to stay with 2 or 3 correlation, because right now you can see that with everything active, it's pretty hard to read and trying to get like any conclusion there. So let's see, for example, let's see the correlation between CSAT and language. So I'm gonna deactivate everything else. And now you can see, oh, sorry, there you go, it's the opposite. You can see now that I found like 464 conversations in the last 30 days. I can also choose like my filter. Right now, we can see that a big chunk of a bad CSAT is coming from the English, like is coming from hero support in English. But actually, we still have some support here, some negative CSAT, for example, in Japanese and in French. You can see that actually French is the same percentage of like bad CSAT compared to English. So it's 21%. But it does represent just a smaller chunk just because we have less volume in French. And you can see here in Indonesian, we only have like 15%. So I would like to understand like why are we suffering French? So I'm gonna click on it, click on that results. And here you can see that it found like those conversations. So I will give you a little secret. I actually do speak French, but I assume that maybe not some of them don't actually speak French. So there's actually a tool for that. We have an automatic translating tool. So depending on the language of the app that you have chosen, so for example, if you choose German and so on, you can just click on it and then the conversation is going to be translated to your target language. So that's quite an easy feature, like just to try and understand, even though you don't speak the target language, try to understand why that ticket has been failed. So yeah, you have like, to go back to Insight, you have the Insight for conversation and the Insight for agent. Now let's say that still that's like the Insight for conversation is still quite more useful than for agent. Now, all right, now we have done everything within the conversation level. We looked at AutoQA, Spotlight, let's now take a look at the results and how to analyze those results. So now let's go to the dashboard, and you have actually a dashboard separate for AutoQA. So basically, all kind of philosophy around AI and like especially AutoQA is to separate it from the manual QA. So we didn't want to merge the two and only have one dashboard. We actually separated just to make sure that you have a lane for AutoQA and a lane for AI QA, and you're gonna have a lane for manual QA. So here you can see like all the results for AutoQA. You can see your AQS over time. You can see also the average and the counts. You can see the breakdown for taught language. You're gonna have the category insights, the category score over time, AutoQA's conversation per category, and then like category score per review. Then you also have the root cause for spelling grammars and for tone. So you can see also which one are coming up the more often. So quite important for on that is you basically, if you have like a filter selection, the whole dashboard is going to change. So all of the dashboard are dynamic. So if you want, for example, to see like a particular IQS, you can, for an agent, you can just choose the agent. Let's say, I really hope that this result for Ali here. No, unfortunately not. I will try it by myself. I believe I saw some conversation here. All right, there you go. So you can see that I'm not basically quite successful in terms of like of AutoQA. I just achieved 69%. And yeah, I can start analyzing my results. So you can see that I actually speak Indonesian and English. And I can see that like solution is really poor, 28%. Now I would like to understand what happened in that solution. Now, that's the thing, is like, if you click on here, you're gonna have all the conversation, like all the 7 conversation that's been analyzed by AutoQA. Now, to analyze why, like the solution, like my, in this case, the category solution was so poor for me, what I would advise you actually for you to create like a filter based on that. So I'm gonna create a filter now based on solution is negative over the last 30 days. So I'm going to name it solution is negative. Perfect. Now let's go in there. And why didn't, if I want to just see the result of, in this case, like Nicholas agent, why didn't choose like maybe there's something wrong. No, in this case, like there's nothing wrong. So maybe like maybe it's comprehension. Let's take another one. Still nothing. All right. Well, maybe, that's because of I was in the wrong workspace. I'm so sorry, everyone. Something like stuff happens, during doing those goals. So I'm just going back to now the right workspace. There you go. And now we can just create it. I was wondering what was going wrong. So solution is negative. There you go. So 255, that's already a bit more reassuring. So that's something that I would advise you, is like to create one filters for each category negative. And if you want to check if you want to check an individual results, we actually have on top of the regular filters, the quick filter for users. You also have the possibility to reorder the filters, but in there you can choose like in this case, the agent that you would like to analyze. So I'm gonna take Nicholas agent, and now I'm gonna have the 6th conversation where a solution has been marked as negative. So I'm gonna start analyzing that. So that's something that I would advise, is just to create for each category a filter, a public filter that's gonna be accessible for reviewers. So like that your reviewers can just access and try to understand why a certain team members is not achieving his goal. Now, let's continue, right? So in this case, there is also an acceptance rate. Like I really want to take a look at this together for you to also understand like the different metrics in there. Acceptance rates, we're gonna take a look at basically like your like the AutoQA rating and the number of time that you change the rating manually. So I don't know if you remember, but I changed the rating manually when I choose the blended scorecard where you have a bit of AutoQA and a bit of manual QA. I changed the spelling grammars to from 3 to 4. So in this case, that will count for the acceptance rating. So that's what the acceptance rating is monitoring. So obviously for us, we would like to achieve 100%. But it's never going to be 100%. But you can see like overall with the development that we bring in Zendesk to solution, you can see that acceptance rate is gonna evolve. And you're gonna see also like the efficiency gain. So that's something that I always has as a question during the onboarding. It's like, what is the efficiency gain? So it's actually very interesting. We're gonna look at like the auto-reviewed conversation, so 100% of your support, and we're gonna look at like the manual reviewed conversation. And basically, we're gonna just see how much time, how much more conversation AutoQA reviewed compared to the manual. So I just give you an indication of like, I would say how much more conversation AutoQA is doing compared to the manual QA rating. All right. Okay, so I'm good with the dashboard. Now we're gonna discuss about bot QA. So bot QA is one of the more recent development that we brought to the table, which is that we allow you to hook your bots. Now, right now it is currently limited for AI agent, but our team is also looking at expanding. But for this case, like if you're using like the AI agent at Zendesk, you can choose your bots and you can choose and you can start analyzing the results. For example, if I want not just for 1 month, but maybe 3 months, I will refresh the rating and I can see, for example, the escalation rate. I can see also like the conversation that has been handled by bot only or by that has been escalated. And I can see also like a lot of numbers that you would like to have when you start analyzing bots. So for example, we have the bot repetition rates, the low efficiency communication efficiency, the churn risk detected rates, outliers, bot sentiment, etc. So when you click on it, you can also drill down the results, and we're gonna start analyzing like basically the conversation of your bots. Now, audio link your bot is pretty simple. When you go to user, bot, and workspace, or maybe like or all those customers that is on the call, you might have recognized by user and workspace. That used to be like the old name of the settings, and now we just added all friendly bots in there. So here you can link your bots, and we'll automatically detect it if there's a bot used by your Zendesk account, and then you will be able to tell if it's reviewable or not. And then when you go back to the filters, we're gonna also show you like the conversation that's been handled by the bots and the conversation that's been handled by an agent. So for example, here let's create a filters where the bot's communication actually is better than an agent's. So the bot is better. I'm not very creative with filter names, sorry. So here you go. We're gonna look now at all the conversation where there's none. That's too bad. Maybe let's do the opposite then. Let's do the opposite and look at when the communication is worse than agent. I'm pretty sure it's gonna find some conversation. No, not really. That's too bad. Well, I'm gonna see if then we can just look at if the bots has been used within the conversation. See, there you go, 15 conversation. And I'm gonna show you like how it's gonna appear within the screen. All right, so this is a typical bot conversation. So that's why you're gonna see like the difference between the human and the bots. Also, if you're using Flow in Zendesk, you will be able to add your flow as a bot within your Zendesk QA. So you will be able to analyze also those results in there. Now, we're getting to the end. It is true that like maybe we're not gonna reach to or the 1 hour that was announced, but I have still a couple of things that you would like to explore. So one thing that actually I did not discuss as well, and then I forgot during the presentation, is that you actually have like the personalization for insights. So back then, when I was telling you about the data, you can personalize that data in here, so you can see what you consider what will be the data for you. In this case, like we have selected data more than 5 seconds. It's true that like if you have a blank within the conversation of more than 5 seconds, it could be quite disturbing. So that's where you can find like the data, and the same for recording, disclosure missing. If, for example, you have a help desk tags that for inbound or outbound calls, and you only want to have, depending on your legislation, you only want to analyze and see if there's a disclosure missing on certain type of a conversation, then you can select a specific conversation and you use your help desk tags to separate like the different type of calls.